Hi, I'm Jean Shafiroff, and I'm on a mission. Anyone can be a philanthropist. My television show came from my book, Successful Philanthropy, How to Make a Life by What You Give. Won't you join me? Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff, and this show is designed to highlight the work of philanthropic leaders here in the United States and then beyond. Today's show, a little bit different. With us is New York State Assemblywoman Member Seawright. She is a woman involved in many different things, all to help the people of New York State and then our country. Rebecca, my first question to you is, you've been very involved with the Equal Rights Amendment and its passage in New York State. We're in the beginning of Women's History Month. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what you're doing and exactly what that means for women in New York State?
Well, thank you, Jean. It's an honor to be here with you, to be back today on your show. And I am the lead sponsor of the Equal Rights Amendment in the New York State Assembly. The Speaker recently appointed me as chair of the Women's Task Force. And one of our top priorities is to pass the Equal Rights Amendment and to add it to our New York State Constitution in New York. We have to pass it in both the House and the Senate, and twice. And then it'll be put before the voters as a referendum. And I'm confident that we will get it done. This is the year of the woman, and what better day than today, the start of Women's History Month, to have the momentum to get this passed. We are breaking down barriers, building bridges, and on the heels of the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote, we are going to pass the Equal Rights Amendment.
We have to change that because women, it's amazing that women are not part of the Equal Rights Amendment, is not part of the Constitution. Now, you were just appointed to a task force for women. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so Speaker Hastie just appointed me as chair of the Women's Task Force in the New York State Assembly. It's a majority conference of women legislators. We now are up to 55 in the Assembly. And so I'm chairing that task force and sorting through what are our main issues this legislative session that we want to get accomplished. And COVID-19 has disproportionately affected women, women of color, and trans women. And so we think about, what is it that we need to do in this pandemic to bounce back our economy, our society, and the disproportionate effect that it's had on women.
And speaking of this horrific pandemic, what have you done and how are you working to make life better for New Yorkers? This has been something that has really shaken the entire world and created enormous hardship for most everyone. And I just want to know what you've done personally and otherwise, or I should say politically, to be of help.
Well, thank you for that great question, Jean. And you yourself are to be commended for all that you have done. You've participated in our town hall. You've participated in press conferences with us. We have held 40 town halls on Zoom for the community, bringing in medical experts and unemployment experts to help our constituency on the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island. And being appointed to the Ways and Means Committee, we just held our last budget hearing where I questioned Dr. Zucker, the state health commissioner, on the vaccine rollout. And I said, we need a dedicated space in Manhattan. And I have spaces, churches, synagogues, and Asphalt Green right in my district on the Upper East Side that have offered to be a vaccine location. And so I questioned Dr. Zucker that while the Javits Center is open to everyone in other boroughs, we need a dedicated center in Manhattan just for Manhattan residents. What we're finding is that senior citizens and people that are shut in, people with disabilities, are not able to get the vaccine. So one of the things that I'm focused on is providing additional locations in my district. We have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine coming out this weekend. Starting Monday, it will be available. So I think we're in a period where we're going to see everyone that wants to get vaccinated is going to have the opportunity.
And I think that's so important because we really have to conquer this. And it's, as I said before, it's been a miserable time. And I understand that you're also involved on the Powerful Ways and Means Committee, and that you were elected to this position. What does that exactly mean?
So being a member of the Ways and Means Committee, we analyze the state budget, we hear from all of the state agencies, and we balance and allocate the funds. And so we just finished our last hearing this week on Thursday. I think it was 24 consecutive budget hearings dealing with law enforcement, local governments and cities. Mayor de Blasio testified in front of us, as well as the state commissioners of every respective state agency. And the governor has put out his executive budget, his 30-day amendments. Now we're conferencing our one House bill. The Senate is conferencing their one House resolution. And then we will come together with those three proposals and carve out that budget. So it's going to be many, many late hours this week conferencing what should be in it. We have a lot of important work to do and a lot of really competing interests on what we're going to do. And now is such a critical time that we provide the resources for our small businesses on the Upper East Side and around the state to bounce back. The restaurants are now at 35% in Manhattan. And so we need to offer as much assistance as we can to people to help them get back on their feet.
No question. And regarding the Upper East Side and life there, and then life all over the state, it's been really pretty much a nightmare for a lot of the small businesses and for people who are furloughed. And will there be enough programs, though, for them to get them back up on their feet? That's my big question.
Well, we're looking forward to getting the stimulus money from Washington and, relief money. And we're advocating that the local governments and the cities get to decide 50% of the allocation and how it's spent. But we're looking to help the businesses. My office has held Thursday mask giveaways and PPE giveaways for constituents and for local businesses to keep them safe, their employees safe. And so I think this spring is going to bring renewed hope and a strengthened economy as we vaccinate and develop herd immunity against the pandemic.
We're looking forward to that. Now, we have a problem in our city and in our country right now with an uptick in crime. And what is the State Assembly doing moving forward to reduce crime? Of course, everyone needs to be treated fairly. We are in a situation where racial justice is a top priority, I believe, in our country and for most of us. What are we doing to reduce crime in our city and in our state and in our country?
Well, we have seen not only an uptick in crime, but frauds being conducted against especially our senior citizen population during the COVID pandemic. And so one of the things that I'm advocating for is to enlarge our police cadet program at John Jay College and to strengthen the resources that we're putting into criminal justice so that we can combat what's going on during this pandemic and keep our citizens safe.
I think it's vitally important. And for people to want to be in New York City and in this country, safety has always been very important. Again, let's talk about racial justice now and how important is racial justice to you. I know it's very important to me. It's very important to most of our viewers. I want to hear from you, New York State Assemblywoman Rebecca Seawright.
Well, thank you. In the New York State Assembly, we have the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus and Task Force, which I'm a member of. And I think that we need to invest more dollars to combat the racial tensions that are existing. I participated in the Black Lives Matter demonstration on York Avenue that marched right in front of my office up to Carl Schurz Park, and that we need to do all we can to support each other and to fight discrimination. During this COVID pandemic, we've just finished Black History Month during the month of February. And I remember Shirley Chisholm so vividly saying, if women don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And so as we enter today, Women's History Month, the month of March, there's still so much left that we have to do. This pandemic is disproportionately affecting women of color, Latinx women, transgender women, women of color in general. And so we have to look at, what do we do to strengthen our communities and our neighborhoods? And so I say, we need to make it easier for people to get vaccinated. Now that the Johnson & Johnson dosage is coming out, we need to just make it easier. My office is, you can call our office at 212-288-4607, and we will help to make you an appointment to get vaccinated. Many of our senior citizens don't have internet skills. They can't go on the computer to schedule an appointment. They call the 800 number and they're left on hold for hours. So we're trying to be of assistance to people that are having trouble with unemployment, people that are having trouble with their landlord, and people that can't get vaccinated. We encourage them to call our office, and we will try to schedule them appointments.
And that's all so important, Rebecca. And now, as we look forward to the next 4 years, we have a new president and we have a female as a vice president. And I want you to speak a little bit about Vice President Harris and how her involvement as vice president will affect the women's movement.
I've said this is the year of the woman. Shattering glass ceilings in President Biden's choice of the first woman of color to be the vice president of the United States. Women are breaking down barriers, building bridges, and I am so confident that we are going to be able to pass the Equal Rights Amendment at the state level and also at the federal level as well. One of the things that I'm going to do is, and I've done it the last 2 years, Jean, is to draft and pass a resolution calling on the 117th Congress. Last year, we passed calling on Congress to pass the Equal Rights Amendment at the federal level. And so I think passing the resolution at the state level is building momentum to ask the Congress to do the same thing at the federal level. But as far as the New York State Constitution, I do believe that we will be successful in passing the amendment and getting it in ultimately our state constitution. So having Kamala Harris as the vice president of the United States is going to be giving women a major seat at the table, as Shirley Chisholm said. If women aren't at the table, bring a folding chair. And now we have a vice president and a woman of color. And Vice President Harris is going to do wonderful things, not only for women, but for our nation.
And I think we're all looking forward to that. And if the Equal Rights Amendment is passed both in the state and on the national level, and we all want that to happen, what exactly does that mean for women? Will we have pay parity, and what programs will be provided that are not otherwise being provided for now?
So, women still make less than men in their respective fields, and recognizing women and the United States Constitution just means so much that women deserve to be paid equal. And a prime example is the national soccer team, that won the Olympics, and yet they're paid less than the men's soccer team that didn't win, a lot less. And so that is a prime example of women in sports achieving and succeeding and making less than their male counterparts. And so having this Equal Rights Amendment is going to be a huge step in treating women equal in the workplace and fighting against harassment and pregnancy discrimination, and so many other issues. And so I am confident that we're going to be able to get this done and put it before the voters of the state of New York as a referendum. And this will be a huge step in bringing about equal treatment and equality for women, and not only women, but for transgender women and other marginalized communities.
And this is so important. And as a woman, I am a big proponent of women's rights. And one of the charities that I'm very involved with, New York Women's Foundation, a charity to promote the well-being of women across the city and in the boroughs, and to create a just world for everyone. And so getting back to the Equal Rights Amendment, why do you think it's taken so long for this to come forth? And why is it happening just now? Why didn't this become part of our Constitution, say, 30 years ago?
Well, you know, last year we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the suffrage movement and women getting the right to vote. I held a press conference on the sidewalk there on the Upper East Side at 79th and York, and had a 106-year-old feminist speak at my press conference. And she said, "Rebecca, you have to get this done. I want to see the Equal Rights Amendment passed during my lifetime." And Dr. Shirley Zinnemann, who I have honored, is 106 years old. And so we have to get this done. And I think just bringing awareness to it. You know, I remember a time when we didn't have Roe versus Wade, but so many of our young women today have to stand on the shoulders of the women that went before them to achieve equality, because they haven't lived in a world where they have faced all these hurdles of things. There used to be a time when women played half-court basketball because they didn't feel women should be playing full-court basketball. And now women play full court basketball. There used to be a time when a woman couldn't get a credit card in her own name without her husband's signature. And, you know, I remember the story of Sarah Weddington, one of my great icons and mentors. She's the youngest woman to ever argue a successful case before the United States Supreme Court, and that was Roe v. Wade back in 1972. And she was putting her husband at the time through law school, and she couldn't get a credit card in her own name. So she ran for the state legislature, changed the law so that women didn't have to have their husband's signature on the credit card application. And so just having this Equal Rights Amendment is going to be a huge step. And, you know, the young women today, like our daughters, they don't know what it was like when women couldn't get a credit card in their own name, or not be allowed to play full court basketball. So we have to just continue to strengthen our laws so that we have equality.
Yes, and for our viewers, we are with New York State Assemblywoman Member Seawright. She's been an Assemblywoman since 2015. She's very involved in the Equal Rights Amendment being passed now in the state of New York, and very involved in helping the entire state with the budget and with the well-being of all people. Now, Rebecca, one problem that we did not discuss, and that's food insecurity as a result of this pandemic. And I know that we have some really great charities in New York State and really in the country that have been very involved with improving of food insecurity, because so many people we've seen the lines, food lines in New York City wrapping around city blocks, and it's really been a terrible time. And what have you actually done to help with food insecurity?
So one of the things that we have done is deliver meals to senior citizens that are shut in, and there is no contact. It's very safe. As my office called on volunteers to deliver these meals, we leave it right outside their door. We ring the bell, and we're wearing a mask, they're wearing a mask, and they get these hot meals. And so we're continuing to put more money into food pantries. Just recently, I attended a ribbon cutting and spoke at a food pantry with John Hughes Church up on 91st Street and First Avenue at their new location. And so people that don't have food, don't have money, will be able to go there and get food. And people stop in my storefront office on York Avenue and 79th Street, and I send them right across the street to the Department of Education, to the middle school and elementary school, where they can pick up free packages of food. So I think it's so important. Jean, the boards that you serve on, like the Women's Foundation, are helping with issues like food pantries and food insecurity.
And I'm so glad that you're so involved with helping the citizens of New York get food, because there's no question that when a family doesn't have food on the table, it's a real disaster, and children can't study, and a lot of tension is created, and it's food has to be a top priority for everyone. And I know for my family, we've been involved in supporting different food pantries, and my different boards are involved in getting food out to different people. And it becomes a situation where it's not just the work of the charity, but it's the work of the government. And I think we've seen people all across the United States and the world getting involved in helping our neighbors with problems such as food insecurity. And looking forward and looking ahead at this next year, do you think a year from now we'll still be wearing masks, we'll still be involved in this pandemic? Or what are your thoughts on all of this?
You know, I've had 40 consecutive town halls on Zoom. I've coined it Town Hall Tuesdays. So every Tuesday, now every other Tuesday, we're doing a town hall on Zoom featuring physicians and medical experts. And what I am hearing is, with this new variant that's come out, we will, for the next few years, be wearing masks, or encouraging now people to wear 2 masks. And I think a lot depends on the vaccine and the reaction to this new variant that we're already seeing in Manhattan. So it's a new way of life for people, but we're all adjusting, we're all helping with resources, not only financial resources, but technological assistance, helping senior citizens with their computer skills. And so to answer your question, I think this is going to be a time where we have to see what's happening with this new variant that has come out, and how the population responds to it, and how careful people are when they're out in public to not create a spread of this new variant.
Yes, and I agree with you that we have to continue to be very careful, and wearing 2 masks is a very good idea right now. And I think just to keep watching, to social distance, wear the mask, and keep washing your hands. And if we have to do this next year and the year after, well, I think the safety of all people is our first priority. And I'm glad that you are on this, and that you continue to work with the safety regulations for the people of the United States. And as we continue forward, Rebecca, do you think that you will remain in politics for the rest of your life? Do you see yourself with a new, instead of New York State Assemblywoman, would you consider running for perhaps the Senate, or even another position in government? What are your long-term objectives? Because you are very popular with the people, all people, and you have a great concern for women and for everyone in our state. And I know you have a heart of gold, and you're very concerned about the LGBTQ community, racial justice, and just about every issue you are involved with.
Well, Jean, right now I am just focused on this pandemic and doing the best job that I can as the Assemblywoman. I was the first woman elected to this position, and I'm trying to break down barriers and build bridges and get the Equal Rights Amendment passed, and get our economy back, and get our small businesses up and running and thriving again, and helping people with their unemployment claims. And so my focus during this pandemic is to get out the PPE supplies, help people get their vaccines that want it, and jobs. And so that's what my focus is right now, just trying to do the best job that I can.
And I like that very much. And Rebecca, we have just a few minutes left, and I always like to ask our guests, what is on the horizon for our young people? What advice can you give to young people growing up through this pandemic, and what can they do to ensure that they have good futures?
So I would encourage our young people to get involved and stay active and advocate for what they believe in. And my office offers internships both in New York City and in Albany at the state capitol. And I always encourage our young people to come and do an internship in our office and see how the sausage is made in Albany. There's so much that goes into making law and legislation. And there's nothing more better than to have a young person to give us their perspective on what they want for the future, for their lives and for the elderly people that are in their lives. And so my advice is to ask them to volunteer and to get involved, call their local legislator and see how they can help. And my office number is 212-288-4607. They can reach me at Seawright, SEAWRIGHTR, at nyassembly.gov. And if they're looking to volunteer, we have a forum coming up on tax preparation, a forum coming up on how to get vaccinated, a forum coming up on how to fill out their government forms for SCREE and DREE discounts. And so there's nothing better than a young person pairing up with a senior citizen to help them with these challenging skills. So my advice is for young people to advocate and get involved.
Thank you, Rebecca Seawright. This concludes Successful Philanthropy. I'm Jean Shafiroff, your host. I'll see you next week.